And welcome everyone to Singularity University's Global Summit here in San Francisco, California, to this special episode of the Real Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Edwards. Joining me today is Leila Toplic of NetHope. Leila, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So Leila, what brings you and NetHope to the Global Summit?
Well, thank you for having me and for having the opportunity to actually talk about the work we're doing. So maybe just a little bit of framing. NetHope is a nonprofit technology consortium of 57 global NGOs, global nonprofit organizations like Oxfam, Save the Children, Mercy Corps, Habitat for Humanity, the Nature Conservancy, and we work very closely with over 60 different partners, including tech companies. And we're basically leveraging technology and cross-sector partnerships to address the challenges across the humanitarian, development, and conservation context. So what brings me to the summit is really two areas that I'm focused on. One is how we might use emerging technologies like artificial intelligence or blockchain to address societal problems that range from the global refugee crisis, environmental challenges, infectious disease outbreaks like Ebola, all the way to hunger, poverty, and human trafficking. And AI can help us move the needle on all of these problems because mainly it can help us make decisions and act faster in emergencies like natural disasters. It can provide us with the insights to predict and prevent the worst from happening, like the outbreaks of diseases. It can also help us reach people like refugees with the services and information that they need. So what we've been doing in the summit is actually talking about some of these practical examples of how AI can be and is already being applied to address these massive sustainable development goals and the challenges in the world. And then the other area that I focus on is how do we help millions of displaced children and youth, including their host communities, get access to education and meaningful work and have the opportunities to participate in their local communities and globally.
So, Leila, how big of a problem is the refugee crisis right now? Like, I heard by 2050, there's going to be like 150 million people misplaced out of their homes because of climate change, war, and poverty. How big of a problem is this, and what are you doing specifically to take this on?
Yeah, unfortunately, the numbers have increased. So today, there are over 70 million people who are displaced today. Over half of them are under the age of 18. So they're children, they're youth. And what's more, on average, people will spend about 26 years in displacement. And that's primarily due to the fact that 4 out of 5 conflicts last over 10 years. So protracted crises like the global refugee crisis require us to move beyond the immediate solutions and to look at really the role of education and access to work as a way to empower the populations to provide for themselves and their families and to contribute positively in their communities. So what I'm doing is working with a coalition of UN agencies, global nonprofits, local nonprofits and startups, private sector companies like Microsoft or Adobe, as well as governments and academia, and the youth themselves to design specific solutions to the problems around learning and being able to learn if you've been out of school for many years because of displacement, connecting to the meaningful and dignified earning opportunities, and again, having the opportunity for the youth to inspire and lead change, to be the creators themselves of the solutions that are needed in their communities.
So, explain to our audience some of the problems that a refugee would have, whether it's gaining an identity, whether it's being accepted in a different country, being banked, getting loans, establishing credit. What are some of the problems that you find are most challenging, and talk a little bit about how these educational programs are helping these.
Yeah, so maybe let's take one region of the world that I've been focusing on, which is Middle East and North Africa. So Middle East and North Africa is a home to 5% of the world's population, yet it is also a home to over 40% of 70 million displaced. What that means for the youth in the region is that the time of their lives that's typically dedicated to learning and development has been disrupted by conflict and displacement and exposure to trauma and violence. Millions have been forced to drop out of school. The current number is 15 million young people are not in school. They're not learning. Many of them are working in difficult conditions to support themselves and their families. some have been forced to marry early and abandon their hopes and dreams. So what we're doing is looking at how do we connect, especially out of school youth, with the opportunities to learn the skills that will connect them to earning opportunities immediately. Going to a 4-year college is a luxury for many of the young people. So skills training, mentors, role models, learning spaces are all the types of programs that are required in order to take somebody who's been out of school for 5 to 7 years and give them the skills that they need to go and earn a living and positively contribute to their family, but also to the local community. Another thing that we're doing is expanding what might be the economic opportunities, because traditionally the work that the youth have been doing, you find that work locally, there's just not enough jobs. And unemployment rate in places like Middle East and North Africa is the highest in the world, and it's in like around 30%. It's even higher for those who are graduating from universities because there's a disconnect between what the young people are learning and what the economic opportunities are.
Oh, okay.
So what we're also looking to do is expand the type of work opportunities for them, whether it's remote work or freelancing or impact sourcing or entrepreneurship, because that also enables young people to come up with the solutions and products that work for their market and to be employers for the other youth in the region.
So are you focused on growing these jobs in these developing countries, in these emerging markets, or are you focused on getting these people other opportunities where there actually is opportunity in, let's say, like the United States or in Europe and other places around the world?
So it's both. It's expanding the number of available opportunities locally, and part of that is also addressing a couple of other needs. In order to get a job, you need a network, you need a portfolio work, i.e. resume. So this is where internships and apprenticeships, which could be done locally, play an important role, so you can actually have a proof that you're skilled to do a specific job. The second area that is untapped potential, and it will take a lot of work, is to connect youth to, for example, to work that might be available elsewhere through the remote work platforms, through freelancing, or through impact sourcing, which is a form of outsourcing that is specifically focusing on helping some of the most marginalized populations. So that is to say, there's no silver bullet, there's no single solution.
Right.
It is important to understand what are the needs of the population, of the young people. What's the context in which they live, whether it's lack of connectivity, lack of digital literacy, lack of even the knowledge of English, and what programs do we need in order to get them to the point where they're earning dignified living?
All these problems are interconnected. It's so complex, like you referred to. What are some of the results that you've seen with these young members in these programs having access now to education and like that vision? You're restoring hope to themselves and their families. I mean, explain to our audience about some of the results that you've experienced.
Yeah, so I just came back from Jordan, where I had the opportunity, along with my partners at UNICEF, to bring together a group of about 250 thought leaders from across the region, including about 70 youth. As we were looking together to tackle this challenge of connecting learning to earning for the youth in the Middle East and North Africa. And a couple of stories come to mind. A young refugee from Iraq who came into a refugee camp, discovered a learning space, taught himself arts, and is now a mentor to other youth in that refugee camp. So what we're also discovering is that youth not only they're not only optimistic and hungry to learn, but they're also hungry to contribute to their communities as mentors, as role models, as entrepreneurs, as innovators. Another example is a young woman who graduated with technical knowledge from a technical university in Jordan, couldn't find a job because her exact skills were not matched with what was needed in the marketplace, and she didn't have some of the fundamental skills that employers need, some of the foundational skills like collaboration, communication, some of the things that we call soft skills. So she went through a boot camp called Reboot Camp that trains young people not only in employable functional skills, so let's say JavaScript or web development or other aspects like web design, but it also prepares them to be effective team members and to prepare for the interviews. So she was able to, with this program, to gain the types of skills that are employable and to get employment.
Have you found like STEM programs and these tech, you mentioned HTML, Java, C++, like all these different STEM technological programs, have you found them to be the most successful for these kids? And is it, I know you mentioned there's no silver bullet, but have you found that these specific big data programs have been the most effective in terms of advancing the economy and placing refugees in new positions?
Yeah, that's such a good question, Kevin. So going back to that, there's no single solution or no silver bullet. One of the other programs that we featured at the Technology Summit just recently in Jordan is actually a solution, a platform that connects those who have some of the like less technology-driven skills, like plumbing, with the work that is available locally. So what is, again, important to understand is that not everybody should become or will ever become a data scientist or a developer. And that's also not what the whole community needs. Right. Community needs a really diverse a workforce that includes artists, that includes innovators, that includes plumbers, that includes chefs, that includes fashion designers, that includes a whole representation of what the society is.
Right.
So we also highlighted some of the young creatives that they're pursuing creative pathways, which means not being a designer as a hobby or a photographer as a hobby, but something that is earning them a living. And that is also important to elevate the importance of arts and in the community. So we can't just design the programs to be focused on teaching everybody how to code.
Right. And Leila, with climate change having such a big impact and war and conflict having such a big impact on displacing people out of their areas due to floods, due to crop yields and uninhabitable
famines,
areas, heat exhaustion, ocean, all that stuff. There's going to be more and more and more refugees. What gives yourself and NetHopes hope that you can take on these challenges as more people are displaced?
So what's been interesting, just to bring us back to the Singularity University Global Summit, while we have made some progress on some of the massive challenges that we see in the world, as Ray and Peter talked about, there's still many of the societal challenges, and there's also some that are on the rise. So whether it's the challenges with the climate and with the environment or with the global refugee crisis. So what gives me hope is that we have a set of tools, which includes technologies like AI, for example, to solve some of these challenges. The other thing that gives me hope is that I'm seeing, as Rob was saying earlier this week, uncommon partners. So private sector, so enterprises, startups, academia, nonprofits, impacted populations, communities coming together to collaborate on the solutions, because there's no single organization or single sector that can tackle this alone. Also, doing good is everybody's job, not just the job of the nonprofits. So that's promising, but obviously there's more that we need to do in order to change the course on some of these massive problems and make sure that we don't end up with 150 million displaced.
Right. Well, Leila, you mentioned we need more partnerships. It's not going to take one organization. It's going to take on all these 150 million people potentially. We think this is going to take a lot of leadership. So the last question I'll ask you is, what is your definition of a real leader?
Listening and observing, understanding what's out there, what already works. What can you lift up, support, emulate, reuse, rather than trying in your own siloed way to come up with your own solution. So what is important is really to understand the context in which you live, understand that everybody has value to add, to be able to bring people together. And that's the work that I'm talking about that we've been doing, is bring different expertise together and try to create solutions, adapt solutions rather than duplicate what already exists. Try to lift up what's already working and scale those programs.
Leila, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Kevin.
For Leila Toplic, I'm Kevin Edwards telling you all to keep it real.
Great.
Thanks, Leila.